Last but certainly not least, our final speaker of the day is CEO of Digital Growth Institute, James Robert Lay. He says technology transformed the consumer buying journey for financial products, but COVID accelerated the transformation by increasing self-service banking when physical branch locations shut down. Does that mean self-service is the only way to go? Let's find out. Here is James Robert Lay with more on the rise of self-service banking.
Thank you so much. It is so good to be with you all today. I'm really looking forward to the conversation and what the opportunities are available for your credit union as we move forward into the future. First and foremost, I'd like to just begin when we think about change. What a century this last decade has been over the past 18 months. If there is one lesson that we've all learned, it's that we can be all caught up and consumed by the word change. But through those lessons, change can also be one of the greatest teachers. And sometimes change can be hard, change can be scary, change can be painful, but change is part of the transformational process. Change is in essence part of growth. And massive change can feel like it's become the new normal. It's easy, particularly when we think back, not over just the last 18 months, but really over the last, I would say, 3 to 5, 10 years, how much change we were already experiencing, changes that we were seeing in technology from a marketing, a sales, and even self-service perspective. And it was those changes in technology that was driving changes in consumer behavior, how they would shop for financial products, how they would buy financial products, and then how they would just conduct their day-to-day, what we would call transactional banking. And as a result, because technology and transformation of consumer behavior, we've also seen changes in competition with fintech, really probably more than so in the last 18, 24 months, exploding because they're seeing the opportunity and are looking to capture that when looking at the world through these two lenses of technology and consumer behavior. But there's one thing that has really driven change further, farther, faster over the past 18 months, and maybe even the greatest changes that we've experienced in our life up to this point, both personally and professionally. And that change has been COVID. And there are two ways to think about the changes that we've experienced, where we can go from here. Either option A, number one, we can wish, we can hope, we can long for the good old days of life as we knew it back in January of 2020. Or B, option number two, we can courageously commit to create an even bigger, a better, a brighter future for our members, for the communities that our credit union serves, because they too have been impacted by these massive changes. And when we put our focus on helping others navigate the changes that COVID has brought on, change can become a little bit easier, because the change is no longer about us. Change is focusing on helping to transform the lives of people and the communities that we serve by putting the transformation of them over the commoditized transaction of dollars and cents. Once again, I get it. I want to be very empathetic to this point here. No one likes change. Many of us have experienced change as being something that's hard, scary, painful. I get it. But if there's one thing that you can take from today's conversation and apply it to your own life, both personally as well as professionally, it's to get comfortable feeling uncomfortable, because it's my prediction that COVID has been a preview of all of the exponential changes that we are going to experience over the next 3 to 5 years, in both the short term as well as over the next decade in the long term. And the best way to get comfortable feeling uncomfortable, and this is just a personal aside here, it's to take a cold shower every day. because it's that cold shower. We're so used to that warm shower. It's the cold shower that can help to train your mind to manage environmental stress at the most micro of levels. Because when you master and manage stress at the micro level, it becomes so much easier to manage change at the macro level. And going forward, I recommend and encourage a conversation internally at your credit union when it comes to these different areas of focus, marketing, sales, and service, to no longer think about change, but to begin to think about transformation. Because transformation is about growth. It's about being even better. It's about helping others to reach and achieve their full potential as individuals, as teams, as organizations, as members, as communities. There's a tremendous opportunity for your financial brand, for your credit union, to transform thinking beyond a past that was built on the physical world. You can see branches, you can touch branches, you can walk in, you can smell it. And that's where I see a lot of challenges, is moving from the physical world of brick and mortar into the digital world, the intangible world of platforms like mobile devices. It creates some confusion. It creates some chaos, and it can feel a little bit scary as well. But unlike the physical world of branches, it's the digital world that provides a massive opportunity for continuous growth, to be even better, to help even more. Because think about this. Once you build a physical branch location, it's done. But when you think about digital and digital service, self-service, it all comes down to experience. And experiences can be continuously optimized as we learn from what works and what could be even better going forward. And as we continue to move forward, the most important transformations I want your financial brand, your credit union, to really consider are changing consumer expectations, even more deeply, the emotions that they feel. Because while we do lose some of the quote unquote human touch through self-serve, through digital, we must remember that people still do business with people, particularly in a complex buying cycle like banking, choosing a financial product. But we also must remember, more so particularly as credit unions, we are still in the business of people helping people. And for us to continue to live out that mission, to live out that purpose, what we must do in this digital world will in fact require us to transform 3 areas of focus within our credit union. Areas that I've mentioned before, and we will continue to wrap up with as we continue the conversation: marketing, sales, and more so for this discussion, service. And that's why I want to educate, I want to empower you to break free from what I call the legacy growth model that combines marketing, sales, and service that was rooted traditionally in the physical world, a world where digital historically has supported branches. And when I say digital, that could be ATM, ITM, mobile devices, online applications. All of that has been bolted on to an old business model that was built for the physical world. And there are many that cling to this because this is all they know. This is all they have experienced. And that's why it's important to really approach this conversation with a lot of empathy, because when you think about transforming the growth model beyond the physical world to that of a digital first model, to where the physical world now supports the digital world, you have to be considerate that you're transforming people's lives, their thinking, their paradigm upside down. And all transformation, all growth begins with two things. First and foremost, telling the truth about where you've been, where you're at, and where you could grow next on your own journey. And then number two, getting training and education to plot a path forward, to help the unaware become aware of what the opportunities are, and to help others escape what I call the four fears: the fear of the unknown, the fear of change, the fear of failure, and even sometimes the fear of success. But I want to roll back to the point of telling the truth about where we've been, where we're at, and where we can grow next. And I have 5 questions that I would like for you to ponder on today. Questions that really can help us reflect on the experience that we've had over the last 18 months when we see the rise of self-serve in banking. And the very first question is this: is there a case for ATMs in a post-COVID world? And we'll take this question even further by launching a poll here. And so if we can get the poll launched, this is the question. Thinking about your future, do you feel ATMs will increase or decrease in strategic importance? Thinking about your future, will ATMs increase or decrease in strategic importance? Because if you think about consumer behavior, trends, patterns, what has the last 18 months done at your own credit union's use of ATMs? I'm talking specifically about ATMs and not ITMs. And so one of the things that you can do here is, if you need to, you can minimize the media player to see this poll. And if you minimize the player, you'll see this poll, and there are 3 possible answers. You can answer to this question. Things could be increased. ATMs can be increased in strategic importance. They might decrease in strategic importance, or you're just not sure yet. It's too early to tell. Because there are other channels now available to help resolve what the ATM historically has done, particularly the ITM, which we'll talk about the ITM here in a moment. So I'm curious to know what you think as we reflect on where we've been and where we can go next as you minimize the media player to see the poll. All right, let's go ahead. If possible, we can close the poll. We might be able to get some results. There's the results. Okay, so we're looking at here. It's actually a split. Almost 50% said they will decrease in importance. 40% said they will increase. 8% said, I am not sure. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we're seeing in regards to the trends and to the patterns as we reflect back on some of the insights in the marketplace. So I'm going to come back over here to the slide deck. First and foremost, I was surprised to find that cash makes up 60% of payments under $10 and about 25% of payments from $10 to $20. And this is according to trends impacting the ATM industry, according to ATMIA. And one of the things that we must consider is, if you think back to the early pandemic, we thought the use of cash actually might decrease. Well, what the 2020 Federal Reserve study found is that 70% of Americans said they did not avoid the use of cash during the pandemic. And so this idea that because of this pandemic, people might use cash less, that was not the case. So we must keep this in mind when thinking about ATM trends. Furthermore, according to John Verrez, he found through a study that you can operate about 11 branded deposit remote ATM sites for the cost of operating a single branch. And if you think about how branch traffic continues to decline, ask yourself, why are people going into the branch to begin with in the first place? Now, there are two camps to consider. There's the Brett Kings of the world who say that the branch is dead. My take on this is that the branch is going through a transformational process that will be less transactional and even more transformational when it comes to working with members, because all of the transactional components of the old world can be fulfilled through remote and self-serve, for example, like the ATM. As we look ahead towards the future, we must also be aware of what is going on in the world of crypto. This is an example of a Bitcoin machine that I took at the Amsterdam airport back when I was able to travel. But it's a way to move currency from crypto, Bitcoin in this particular case, into actual euros. So that's just another area to really explore, because I see crypto continuing to rise in importance at a consumer level. We also must consider what central banks might do with digital currencies as well, and how that will impact the use of ATMs. Another example of this is what has come from Sheetz. They're a convenience store gas station. They had partnered up with NCR to bring digital currencies to the fuel pump. And so now people are actually able to pay with crypto when buying fuel, as well as make purchases in the convenience store. And then finally, we're seeing an increase in third parties beginning to empower banks as well as credit unions to help navigate this cryptocurrency world, so that we're probably going to have a mix of currencies. It comes back to my point of transforming the branch beyond the physical world. Now we're transforming currency beyond the physical world as well of cash. Another question that I want you to consider as we look about where we've been, where we're at, and where we could continue to grow, the rise of self-serve, is, does mobile video have the potential to become the next ITM in a post-COVID world? Now, this is where there might be more of, coming back to that question, those that are seeing the ATM decrease in strategic importance could be because they're looking at an ITM play. When we look at the ITM, and a great quote from John here at Level 5, aside from maybe a cashier's check, if they don't have a check printer embedded, modern ITMs can do 90% of anything a lobby teller can do. So how would the ITM play into a quote-unquote branching strategy, not built around the physical world of brick and mortar, but more of strategically placing ITMs in certain areas that there could be a physical place that someone would need to go to conduct something that they would historically have done via ATM, but now they have the quote-unquote face-to-face capability of the ITM. A report from Forrester, and this is why I wanted to bring this up about video, Forrester found that 40 to 50% have increased use of video chat sessions as a result of COVID. This idea of video communication is one that I will really see as a strategic competitive advantage. The credit unions that continue to invest in training team members to communicate confidently through video will be the ones that are much further ahead, because having a conversation as we're doing right now, as I am doing, I am looking into a little bit what used to be intimidating Cyclops eye, but we started practicing utilizing video 3 or 4 years ago as a communication tool. I think the financial brands that do the same, and there's a great book on the subject by a friend of mine, his name is Marcus Sheraton. It's called The Visual Sell, and it's all about how to use video and build video as an internal marketing, sales, and even service component to the overall credit union experiences. You see, COVID transformed communication. Video is now the new normal. And if we think back to what has happened, if we are doing this experience, and think about yourself, go back to January of 2020, your confidence of using a platform like Zoom, for example. Now there are other ways to bring video into the service experience, because does the ITM, does that get supported by mobile video when someone doesn't necessarily need the functionality of the ITM? 90% of that, once again, could have been done in a physical branch. Could that also be utilized as a video in your pocket, meet with a credit union expert anytime, anywhere? This is something that Umpqua Bank was experimenting with before the pandemic. It's one that I predict will continue to rise in importance, but it all will come down to training internal team members to get comfortable to talking into the Cyclops eye of the video camera. Moving on to another question here. When it comes to self-serve, what will the role of AI chatbots be post-COVID? And I'm curious for those attending today, have you deployed conversational AI chatbots as part of your self-service experience? So let's take a look and see. I'm going to come out of here, move back over here. Have you deployed conversational AI chatbots as part of your self-service experience? Once again, you might need to minimize the media player to view the poll. Yes, we have. No, we haven't. Or I am not sure. So looking at this, we actually see the responses coming in following the Pareto principle, almost an 80-20 split. 15% have responded, yes, they've deployed conversational AI chatbots as part of the self-service experience. 82% have not, and then 2.5% are not sure just yet. So I'm going to come back over here. Let's share my screen. And we will continue forward looking at some of the trends that will impact this, and some further thinking that you can do here. Now, this is interesting because this actually follows what we saw in the survey here. 85% have not in our survey. According to the financial brand, 75% of financial brands agree they are not prepared to implement conversational AI bots into their operations. To me, this is a great bridge to optimize the self-serve experience here. And I want to give you 3 particular steps that you can do this and move forward with confidence, because this exercise, this activity alone of chatbots, of conversational AI, can feel like an impossible mountain to climb. And just like anything, we can begin to break things up into small chunks. And so what I'd like to walk you through are just 3 steps to apply this thinking. And first is the low-hanging fruit when it comes to conversational AI. Work with your call center team, for example, even work with your branch team to identify what are the top most common questions that we get. And before someone calls, before someone even sends an email, let's help them self-serve and find the answers that they're looking for. One of the most common questions is, where Can I reset my mobile banking password? Well, that's where video can come back into play. Actually have a recorded experience walking through what it's like to reset the password on a desktop, on a mobile device, and maybe break the mobile device into iPhone or Android if those experiences are slightly different. And it's a way that someone can self-serve through this here. The other questions that we commonly see when working with both banks and credit unions is obviously it's the routing number question, and then hours, locations. I think the other thing too on this front, on hours and locations in regards to self-serve, and just to make a note of this, is the branch scheduling tool. I think the more that we can encourage people to schedule appointments in branches or even to schedule digital appointments, the more value we can create, because even those digital appointments, while they might not be facilitated through an ITM-like platform, that is where the mobile phone bridges and complements the ITM strategy of utilizing video to humanize the digital experience. Once you get that low-hanging fruit, then you can start looking at more of the questions that we're getting into specific channels. In this particular case, mobile and online banking. And some of the top common questions that we get there are, how do I send money? How do I skip a payment? How do I change my address? And not just having a written response being filtered out by the chat bot, that conversational AI experience, linking that person over to a video that walks them through step by step. There's a reason that YouTube is the #2 search engine in the world behind Google, YouTube even being owned by Google. And that's because if people have questions, YouTube provides resources to guide them through those experiences in a different way than just written word does here. So once again, another opportunity for video. And then finally, we're getting to really some of the deep complexities of where I'm most excited about self-serve is I ask a question or I ask for a task, I get a response. So now conversational AI isn't just a chat bot. Now you're getting into voice banking with platforms like Siri and Alexa. I got to be careful with what I say. Amazon device, please pay my Spotify bill, or Amazon device, what's my minimum credit card payment? And then I would get my response, and now no longer do I have to log in. It just becomes part of that conversation there. When it comes to conversational AI, both from a service perspective, a sales perspective, and even a marketing perspective, one of the best books on the subject is called Conversational Marketing. And one of the key points to note here is chatbots increased 67% for sales, and then also increased customer satisfaction scores by 24%. I know the big fear around conversational AI and chatbots is we're removing the human experience, but we're just creating another level of capability that if the chatbot is not able to provide the answer, we can then bring the human being in with a higher level of empathy. I want to move to our fourth question here as we reflect on where we've been, where we're at, moving through this COVID experience, particularly on what's COVID's impact on mobile adoption. And what we are seeing here is that over 70% of customers, and particularly looking at the big four here in the United States alone, over 70% through the COVID experience are utilizing mobile banking apps now. And what's important to note, that is a 63% increase from April of 2019. So this comes back to the point, and we all know this, but I think it's just important to look at this in context of how much the adoption has increased. And as we here at the Digital Growth Institute, we study the intersection of marketing, of sales, of technology, and then of human behavior, and then the service experiences that connect all of these elements together. Once a new habit has been formed, in this particular case, like mobile banking adoption, and seeing this type of increase from April of 2019 to now, we're not going back. We won't see people revert back to those old patterns, those old behaviors. The big question is what are they doing here? Like what are the most common patterns and trends? Why do people log in the first place? Well, obviously to view account balances, but now that gets into my previous point about conversational AI. So no longer do I have to log in. I can just ask a question. And then also, once again, conversational AI, reviewing transactional history. But if we're positioning around these 2 points here, it's table stakes. Everyone has these capabilities today. And I would say it's still transactional. And it comes back to the point I made before. When we focus on putting the transformation of people over the transaction of dollars and cents, that's the opportunity to truly live out the credit union philosophy of people helping people. If I was to take this a next step, it's like, okay, review transactional history, but what are the recommendations? What type of guidance might you be able to provide based upon an individual member's transactions? Because that takes service to a whole new level of experience. That takes service from you ask me a question, I give you the answer, but no longer am I just giving you the answer, I'm giving you context, I'm giving you guidance, I'm giving you advice, I'm giving you coaching. And when we're looking at helping people to improve their financial situation, their financial health, their financial well-being, which is so deeply rooted in a person's physical health and their mental well-being, when we can take this transactional data and then provide context, guidance, recommendation, coaching, to me, that is one of the next levels up of service, regardless of if that recommendation is being made via self-serve, conversational AI app, or if you're adding in a human component of accountability and having some type of quarterly coaching session with members. There's a firm out of New York who is doing just that called the Financial Gym, and I see it's such a great model to bring in internally and make a key part of the service experience that we have at credit unions. On the mobile side too, we have the payments consideration. And when looking over the last 18 months, Zelle found that Gen X and boomers drove the greatest adoption of P2P payments. You know you have made it as a brand when your brand becomes a verb. Someone asks you for money? Yeah, just Venmo me. Someone asks me for money? Yeah, I'll Zelle you. And so, but it's important to note that this isn't just a millennial activity. It's not even a Gen Z activity. It's now moving into other demographics from an adoption standpoint. Now, this idea of mobile payments and P2P payments, how will this impact other aspects of the credit union, like, for example, the ATM? I can think of just my own adoption and usage of this. My wife and I, we have 4 kids who are now 11, 9, 7, and 5. And a few years ago, when we started getting babysitters, I started asking them, I said, do you have a Venmo account? Do you have a Zelle account that I can just Zelle you? Because for me personally, I found it so annoying, like not having cash on hand. And then you'd come back from, going out, it's late, and you have to stop by that ATM, and it just was not a good experience. And so even my own behavior here has changed, but it's important to note that this isn't just a millennial or a Gen Z. It's also moving into other generations as well. Furthermore, from the financial brand, only 20% of consumers would now rather visit brick and mortar than bank via digital channels in a post-COVID world. Does that mean that people will not go and visit the branch? For the transactional aspect of banking, probably not if they have found an even better way to do this. From a guidance, an expertise, I need to sit down with someone and talk about my situation, possibly. But if there's another path forward, like meeting via video, meeting remotely, there's that path as well. And really what we're seeing here leads us nicely into the next question. How can you further optimize the online account opening process in a post-COVID world? Because what we're experiencing is almost like the great books of the 1980s that some of you might recall either reading yourself or your kids, the Choose Your Own Adventure series, to where you would read through the book and there are multiple ways, multiple choices that you can make that would either lead to your success or end in your demise. And if you didn't quite achieve your goal, then you could go back, turn the page back a few and pick another step and go onwards and upwards. But we're seeing the potential for choose your own adventure. And we've started experimenting with this, and we're utilizing and studying this in some of the digital secret shopping that we're doing with financial brands. The apply button, for example. We could call this self-serve. And we're going to look at some of the trends that we have found, but with the apply button, there are now multiple ways to apply. And by not just sending someone to a third-party application immediately, by adding what we call a bridge page in between to where someone clicks the apply button, and then we ask them a follow-up question on that bridge page. Well, how would you like to apply for your mortgage? And you have 3 possible paths: online in less than 10 minutes, over the phone, or to schedule an appointment to meet with someone in person. And so those 3 paths then give an individual choice, but not too many choices, because there is a paradox of choice. Too many choices actually creates no choice at all. But by giving them choice, by giving them agency, by giving them control, they feel like they're more in control of their shopping experience. So what I want to do now is come over to our question here. Do you use marketing and sales automation to proactively follow up with abandoned self-serve applications, deposit, loans, consumer loans, mortgage, and more specifically, are you following up with these applications in 1 to 3 hours? So I'm going to come back over here and let's take a look. And the reason that I use 1 to 3 hours as a benchmark, from the secret shopping studies that we conduct, that is your benchmark against fintech. That is your benchmark against the other financial brands who are more digitally focused. And so what we're seeing here, 26% said, yes, we're actively following up. 58% said no. 15% said, I am not sure. This follows some trends that we are seeing as well. So let me come back over here and share my screen. And I want to give you some insights and thinking to consider, particularly around this area. Because to me, when you think about self-serve, this is such a low-hanging fruit that we can look to create and capture. Here's why. 87% of consumer shopping journeys start online for a financial product, but, and this is the big but, only 2% convert on the first visit. So we must consider that there are multiple steps that they go through when coming back and forth. And that's why when doing digital secret shopping, it's so important to ask, do you feel like you can trust this financial brand's website? How does it make you feel? Because trust is being established long before someone walks into a physical branch. Number 2, 43% of consumers, and here's a major perception gap. 43% of consumers believe the majority of websites are not designed around their needs as an end user, while 95% of product teams say that, yeah, this product is easy to shop for and buy on our website. And so we see that gap specifically within the product lines of financial brands and of credit unions through these secret shopping studies. 94%, speaking of secret shopping studies, 94% of banks and credit unions have never undergone any type of secret shopping study. However, 72% conduct, and this was pre-COVID, obviously, they were conducting ongoing branch secret shopping study. So it's more important now, post-COVID, to secret shop digital buying experiences, and we'll look at the lenses that you can identify from a marketing, a sales, and a service aspect, because they do all go hand in hand together. And this is why I ask about following up with abandoned applications. Up to 97% of consumers abandon loan applications, while as many as 65 to 70%, we've seen actually upwards of 80% of consumers are abandoning new account applications. You can improve the self-service experience right here by following up with these abandoned applications, and it would have a huge impact on your bottom line without doing anything else at the top of it, either a marketing or a sales funnel. Simply having automation and outbound calls from a human being following up with someone, we have seen increased conversions by upwards of 15 to 20%. And so that does really, really help. And the reason that people abandon is because they get frustrated with the self-service experience. It's even more challenging on the mobile side of things, as Javelin found that 92% of consumers abandon mobile application. But coming back to the little study that we've done here with this group, very similar to what we saw being shared here, from our research at a larger level, only 17% of banks and credit unions are consistently following up with abandoned applications. I think we saw about a 25% marker within our own study. So it's good to see a higher number, but if we can make that number closer to 80, 90, 100%, I think credit unions can further fulfill their purpose of people helping people. Speaking about people, bonus question. Is future long-term sustainable growth rooted in self-service? Is that sustainable? Is it sustainable to keep focusing on this? And I want to give you some perspective here of what we're seeing when looking out at other verticals, particularly within the food delivery market, something that COVID really helped to fuel once again. It was valued at $107 billion in 2020. Well, while that might be great for consumers, restaurants on the other side of the spectrum aren't so happy, because these mobile delivery apps are now taking 40% from their average order. So that's impacting their bottom line negatively. So there's always almost a duplicity, if you will, of having to look at the pros and cons of self-serve. On to Starbucks. Starbucks found that more than a quarter of all Starbucks mobile orders in the U.S. are now paid for with a smartphone. The challenge, though, however, is this ease of ordering has created conflict for their internal team members because of delays, which is impacting negatively the customer experience. Customers have an expectation that I order, it should be ready when I arrive, but they're being backlogged because some of the orders that are coming in are being inspired by these TikTok influencers to make these crazy drinks that take more time. And so this idea of experience, we'll come back here, expectation, setting the expectations of what the experience will be like in the first place. And so this is just looking at some of what's going on outside and how this can possibly impact us internally, because there are a couple of warnings here. When we think about self-serve, if everything is self-serve, do we open up ourselves to be even more so commoditized than ever before? Is the self-serve experience commoditizable? if all the self-serve experience is focused around is transaction, I would say the answer is yes. That is why the opportunity is to continuously recommit to putting the transformation of people over the transaction of dollars and cents. Something to ask about: what value is your self-service experience creating, and how are you protecting against commoditization? Particularly as you move forward into the future, how are you protecting against commoditization? Because banking has been commoditized. Technology was the catalyst for that. But then what can we do to break free from that commoditization as we move forward, complementing both the digital and the human experience combined? Another possible threat of self-service is just confusion. It's conflict, as I was mentioning before, with the example of the mobile ordering for food, and then also the Starbucks mobile ordering app experience. And here's why. 70% of customers use self-service channels during their resolution journey. They had some type of conflict. They were looking for conflict resolution. But just 9% of those are resolved from start to finish without having to switch to a live agent, according to Gartner. Opportunity, as I mentioned before, conversational AI, knowing that we're probably going to have to bring the human experience in sometime, looking at, once again, macro trends. Furthermore, 87% of consumers still prefer humans over chatbots for interactions. And when we look at this idea of human to chatbot, we have to ask why. What does this all boil down to? It's experience. It's experience about how our experiences make people feel. And so you've got a couple of things to consider: the employee experience, the human experience, the digital experience, and how all three of those are interconnected and can lead to future growth. And so I want to give you a model here to really think through your experiences as you go forward and how marketing, sales, and service all get aligned. Marketing is focused on driving traffic because people in the awareness stage of a buying journey say, I need to know you. Sales then nurtures those leads in the consideration stage because people need to like you. And then service can support conversions after post-conversion because that's where people need to trust you. And so if we look at these different experiences, what are the opportunities to optimize what you're already doing as you move forward? Is that through mobile banking? Is that by bringing video capability into mobile banking? Is it by merging the ATM, ITM experience? Is it introducing service and conversational chatbots? Perhaps it's moving up a little bit further into the funnel of optimizing the digital account opening experience because there's an opportunity that you're losing out on with the abandoned applications. Can those abandoned applications be followed up with through automation? Maybe it's through a sales chatbot. Is it even further up? Is it about building a website that sells to generate even more leads through self-service apps and looking at marketing automation? I don't want you to get hung up in all of the technologies, but give you a model to frame your thinking around as you move forward. The most important thing to consider here is that technology must be viewed as a tool that connects people together for good. Technology cannot be a tool that replaces people. We see that. We see that in other verticals and other research. But if we look at technology as a tool that connects people together for good, the one technology that I see is going to probably make the biggest difference will be video. Because it's through video that makes a human connection. And when we think about money and the emotional experience of money and where people have been on their own COVID experience, people feel confused, people feel frustrated, people feel overwhelmed. And there's a lack of trust in financial brands and financial services because millennials particularly, probably had it the hardest. They don't feel that their financial brand, their bank, credit union understands them, and only 8% trust their institution for guidance. And it's this idea, this area of guidance that I want you to think about as you move forward, rooted in human relationships being driven and delivered through digital experiences. because at the foundation of every relationship must be respect. And respect is a big part of the service experience. Obviously, at the pinnacle, it's love, but most importantly, through our service experience, are we continuously reinforcing trust? What Google found is that human interaction, even if online, is the most influential source for bank shoppers. Once again, people bank with people. It's just the way that we do the banking, particularly from a transactional perspective. That's the opportunity as we move from a physical world built for the digital, built for the tangible, to a digital world optimized for the intangible, with 5 possible paths that we've talked about today, okay, that can be framed around optimizing employee experiences, because a positive employee experience will directly deliver a positive human experience that can be delivered through a digital experience. Optimizing the digital account opening process, piloting sales automation to recapture abandoned application, humanizing mobile banking with video integration, enhancing the ATM iTeam experience to augment the physical footprint that you have, and then looking at piloting chatbots for self-service experiences. As we wrap up, I want to end on one final question here just to get some context, and then we're going to move into Q&A. What is the next self-service technology that your credit union will implement as you continue to think and consider about putting the transformation of people over the transaction of dollars and cents? Love to get your take on this as you continue forward on your own digital growth journey over the next 3 months to end this year, and then even more so as we move forward into the future. As we wrap up here, I would love to take some time to answer any questions that you might have. Please feel free to use the questions box. Ask your questions, and we will talk through those as we move forward following this final poll here. Let's take a look and see where people are going to commit their time. Pretty even across the space. We've got to focus on ITMs. We've got some who are looking at optimizing the digital banking experience. Probably on the lower end of the spectrum, introducing a new card program. And then finally, those looking to optimize the online account opening experience. Have shared some very practical opportunities from the insights that we have through just our ongoing research on the subject. But for any one of these, like I said, the most important thing to remember, it is about bringing people together. People bank with people, and we as credit unions are all about people helping people. Do not let the technology lose sight of that. So I want to come over here. Let's take a look at questions that we might have. Please feel free to type your question in, and we will take those as they come. One of the questions that I see here is prioritization. Where should we prioritize our focus? Is it on a marketing side? Is it on a sales side? Is it on a service side? It's a fantastic question. And one of the things that I'd like to talk through on that is think about how people shop, how people buy. I would not recommend prioritizing optimizations around a marketing experience to begin with, because if we don't have a positive sales, yet alone a positive service experience, we could do all the marketing in the world, but if the sales and service experience falls flat, we're not delivering on expectations. And it's important to note, what are expectations in the first place? What are experiences in the first place? And experiences are well-defined systems and processes that have been strategically thought out, applied, and then the secret, coming back to the physical versus digital world model for growth, it's optimization. Because experiences will result in one of two things, either a positive or a negative emotion. And so if our sales experience has an opportunity to be optimized, and more so even our service experience has an opportunity to be optimized, I would say start at one of those two areas there, either on the sales side or on the service side, because even then, you could have the best sales experience, but if the service experience falls flat, that would be an area that I would look at focusing on first. Great question. Looks like we got a couple more that are coming through here. What is the best way to get millennials to trust us for guidance and feel like we understand them? Bernadette, fantastic question. So trust, if we come back to the pyramid of human relationships, is built on three things: respect, trust, love. And love in this particular case is just commitment. And really from the lens of service, service is about recommitment. And that's why it's important to continuously, because it costs more to acquire a new member than it does to continuously retain and service an existing member. But to build trust in a digital world is built upon two things. It's what you say, it's what you do. And that is where, in the book I wrote, Banking on Digital Growth, I talk about, number one, identifying a purpose. I think credit unions are so primed to maximize digital growth, particularly if they can communicate that purpose beyond, we have great rates, we have amazing service. But trust comes by positioning yourself as the helpful guide in the narrative, in the story that people tell themselves. A lot of times credit unions think they're the hero in the story. In reality, it's the member, it's the prospective member who's the hero in their own story. And if we look at story archetype and narrative structure, I want to take you back to ninth grade literature. But story, there can only be two heroes. There can be a protagonist and an antagonist, a hero and an anti-hero. And so for us to position ourselves as the hero in a consumer's mind, a member's mind, prospective member's mind, they're like, I'm the hero, you're the anti-hero. And so that alone, that positioning alone, the way that we communicate digitally will impact that. And a lot of that comes from the promotion of what I call narcissistic marketing. It's about us, our great rates, our amazing service. So the way to overcome that is to take on an even more important role in the narrative, which is that of the helpful and empathetic guide. Because there can be no hero without a helpful and empathetic guide. There can be no Luke Skywalker without Obi-Wan Kenobi, because Luke will always remain lost. And I could go down another tangent on that, but I want to come to a couple other questions. So building trust comes down to two things: positioning around being the helpful and empathetic guide, number one. And the way that you position and build trust in a digital economy is through the production and the promotion of content that does two things. It helps first and it sells second. Some other questions here before we wrap up. Do you see, this is from Ronnie, great question. Do you see institutions using AI for after hours and human digital contact during work hours? Yes, absolutely. Because you think about, like, when do a lot of people do their banking? Go back and look at trends. Just go look at your mobile banking trends and patterns and see where those spikes are in mobile usage and what are they doing, number one. Number two, though, and this is a bit of a contrarian point here, who says that we have to staff up around the normal 9 to 5, 8 to 5 anymore? I know, for example, we extended branch hours before COVID, but if we see that there's a influx of online and mobile banking usage, and that's where, we're trying to bridge that gap with AI after hours, who's to say that we can't, because we're living in a remote world, who say that we can't bring the human experience in an after hours perspective based upon volume? So it would take a little bit of studying, but it's the idea of optimization and why it's much easier to optimize digital experience. Once again, you build a branch, the branch is done. You then go and you build digital experiences where you can continuously optimize, learn, test from what is happening to be even better going forward. So I think we might have time, let me see, for one other questions. How can we use existing members' digital experiences to reach new members? Anthony, we're going to end on this one. I love that question. This is what I call, it's part of the Banker Strategy Circle. And the Banker Strategy Circle has it's an operational model. It's an acronym. You build audiences with data. You attract leads and nurture leads with automation. You convert those leads to loans and deposits. You expand those relationships by delighting accounts. And then the R, you repeat the process through ratings, through reviews, because those ratings and reviews will directly impact another prospective member's buying journey. But then ultimately, referrals. Asking for referrals, making referrals part of the service experience, but also part of the acquisition experience, because the most powerful and trusted marketing channel on planet Earth is the trusted recommendation from a friend or a family member. But we must build that into our experiences, and that can be in the mobile app, it can be in online banking, it can be just as the follow-up to a service experience. Do you know someone else that we might be able to help guide along their financial journey? Let me know. Would love to help them as well. Great question, Anthony. It's been a fantastic conversation. I'm going to flip it back over here for time's sake to the Catalyst team. Thank you so much for today. I appreciate you. As do good and keep up the important, meaningful work that you're doing at your credit unions to guide people beyond financial stress towards a bigger, better, and brighter future.
Thank you, James Robert. You've definitely given us all food for thought when it comes to embracing this new digital self-service focused era. For more information on self-service technology, visit the Payment Solutions booth in the Explore section on the Hub. And again, the more you explore, the better your chances for winning an Oculus headset. Be sure to select the survey tool in the console to rate this session. And don't forget to download your CPE certificates. If you missed one, you can go back into the session from the Hub and download it if you qualified. Well, that does it for today. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to another action-packed day tomorrow, starting with Bill Hampel's presentation, The Economy's Impact on Credit Unions. See you there. Have a good evening.